Was last night's game. Here are 10 RPGs that make D&D feel like running through a gelatinous cube. Hey there, adventurers. Welcome back to Short Rest Studios. I'm Judd, and I'm scouting out the best the TTRPG world has to offer so you don't have to quest alone. We're looking at 10 vastly different games, unique fantasy flavor, skeletal rule sets, D6 only mechanics, lightning fast character creation, and we're rating them on ease of transition from D&D 5e. First up, Dragonbane. Dragonbane uses a D20 roll under system where players roll under their skill rating to succeed at a task. A nat 1 in Dragonbane is a good thing. It's called rolling a dragon, and it triggers some cool stuff. Instead of classes, you've got 10 professions that don't always stick with the traditional fantasy archetypes. And like RuneQuest, which inspired the original Swedish game back in 1982, advancement is based on skills rather than classes. It's got the fantasy races you'd expect, plus some unique ones like wolfkin and mallards. Yes, duck people. Another nod to RuneQuest. Your PCs lean more toward low-powered folk heroes than D&D's superhumans, and they adventure in the Misty Vale, a setting caught in a rivalry between dragons and demons. Dragonbane can swing real quick between silly and brutal, and it emphasizes fast gameplay, easy character creation, and minimal GM prep. The mechanics are pretty different from D&D, but it's still super straightforward. The Dragonbane box set contains literally everything you need to play, including the full rules, which add up to 112 pages. On a scale of super easy to still pretty easy, I'll rate the transition from D&D to Dragonbane right in the middle. Easy. Next on the list, Easy D6. Easy D6 might look like just another retro clone at first glance, but it is an incredibly fast-playing, elegant, and innovative system. It's also got a gonzo vibe akin to Dungeon Crawl Classics, but in a rules-light, D6-based fantasy RPG. This system was designed with creativity and ease of play as its top priorities, but it's also deceptively mechanically deep. The core rules use D6 dice pools, boons and banes, and strikes rather than hit points. Instead of classes, Easy D6 has 9 hero paths that put interesting twists on the classic fantasy roles. The core book has a bestiary with 20 classic monsters everybody will recognize and 20 more that are just crazy. And all the monsters are super easy to run and modify. There are loads of tables for generating encounters, treasures, NPCs, locations, and story elements, which makes the game pretty darn simple to run on the fly. Easy D6 is crazy simple, but since the core D6 mechanic is so different from D20 fantasy, I'm rating the transition from D&D at still pretty easy. Our next blazing fast RPG is Cairn. Cairn might be the rules lightest game on this list. Most rules light. The first edition is about 24 pages. You've got 3 stats. Character creation is random and fast. It's literally 4 steps. It retains some familiarity by using a D20 for its core role, but like Dragonbane, it's a roll under system, which gives a very different vibe. Attacks always hit, but combat is still deadly. Cairn 2e is a bit beefier than 1e. There's a Warden's Guide and a Player's Guide with GM advice, a bestiary, magic, character advancement rules, the setting. Built on the bones of Knave and Into the Odd, Cairn goes for classic fantasy adventure with a definite OSR feel. The game is filled with strange folk, hidden treasure, and unspeakable monstrosities. If you go with first edition Cairn, everything you need is in that single 24-page volume. If you go with 2e, there are a couple hundred pages, but it's definitely worth the upgrade. The mechanics are a bit different from D&D, but given that 1e is so compact and both editions are free on DriveThruRPG, I'm rating the transition from 5e to Cairn super easy. Up now, Shadowdark. This is one of my absolute favorite game systems. Shadowdark is old school playstyle, brutal, chaotic fun with modern TTRPG mechanics. It's really all about dungeon crawling. You play scrappy adventurers who may or may not be heroes, plumbing the depths for treasure, facing horrifying monsters in the dark. Death is always a possibility, magic is unpredictable, and the game moves fast. Shadowdark uses a D20 core mechanic just like D&D, but it streamlines everything from character creation to straightforward spell check rolls to combat. The core rules come in at a little over 300 pages, but they're incredibly well organized and intuitive. There's almost no mechanic in Shadowdark that wouldn't feel familiar to a D&D player. The difference is They just all work. Given the similarities to 5e and all the streamlining, plus the fact that there's a free quick start PDF, the transition to Shadowdark gets a rating of super easy. Next on the list, another of my favorite systems, Nimble. Nimble transforms the often sluggish combat of 5e into lightning-fast tactical action. In fact, it was originally a simple set of house rules designed to speed up 5e, but now it's its own system with an incredibly dedicated community around it. Attack and damage rolls are combined. You just roll the damage dice for your weapon, and you only miss if you roll a 1. The magic system is streamlined as well. It's primarily combat-oriented, and the spells level up as you do. You can also spend mana to make them more powerful. One of the most fun aspects of Nimble is its exploding damage dice. When you roll the max on your damage die, that's a crit. And each time you crit, you get to roll again. And as long as you keep critting, you get to keep rolling. Character creation is a breeze. Watch this video to check it out. The character sheets are dead simple, and you still have lots of character options even with a streamlined rule set. Monsters are unique and easy to run even at higher levels. Unlike a lot of other games on this list, Nimble retains the high-powered, superheroic fantasy of D&D, but the system is flexible enough to work for deadlier games with a minimum of tweaking. Just change up the number of wounds PCs can take before going down to make it more deadly. Nimble isn't the only game built on 5e, but it is, in my opinion, one of the best. It's fresh yet familiar, easy to pick up, and there's a free downloadable quick start. For ease of transition from 5e, I'm rating it super easy. I got to sit down with Nimble designer Evan Diaz, and Adventurers Guild members can see that unedited interview and conversations with Drawsteel's James Intricasso, Dungeon Dweller's Joseph Wolf, and future interviews. Guild members get a library of dice and logos maps, my personal campaign notes, and the chance to vote for future video topics. Join the guild at patreon.com/shortreststudios or by clicking the join button right under this video. If you're looking for an exploration-driven fantasy RPG with great world-building tools, check out Knave. The first edition of Knave was incredibly intuitive and only 7 pages, and it's still available on DriveThruRPG for $2.99. But the second edition, coming in at 80 pages, expands on every aspect of the game without losing that intuitive core. It's got modular systems for hex crawling, dungeon delving, potion making, and downtime activities, a fantastic GM's toolkit, and 75 D100 tables for generating environments, monsters, items, spells, NPCs, pretty much whatever you need. Character creation takes literally minutes. There are no classes, ability scores, armor, and difficulty ratings are on a 0 to 10 scale. Knave's inventory system is slot-based, so tracking what you're carrying is incredibly simple, but it also impacts the actual mechanics of the game. If you take enough damage, your wounds start to fill those inventory slots. You'll have to drop gear or even treasure to keep going. Knave 2e has so much stuff: a d6 hazard die system, 100 level-less spells, a spell generator, a monster hunting alchemy system, carousing, gambling, a tactical warfare system for resolving mass battles. There is definitely a lot packed into a short book, but the core rules are simple to teach and run. It uses an intuitive control panel layout. It has your standard 6 abilities and uses D20 rolls. The transition to Knave sits right in the middle at easy. Our next lightning fast RPG that's easy to learn, 5 Torches Deep. This is a fantasy game that basically takes the core of 5e and makes it OSR. It's a game about tough choices and risk versus reward. It's brutal, challenging, and streamlined. And while it's heavier than some other games on this list, the rulebook comes in at under 50 pages. You've got 5th edition's core D20 mechanic, a D20, and modifiers against the DC. But 5 Torches Deep has a mostly standardized DC. For most tasks, it's 11. Character classes are pretty recognizable D&D analogs, but with fewer hit points. Instead of skills and saving throws, you use checks that are determined by your class and archetype. Spells are rolled to cast, and a failure causes a fun mishap. You don't die as soon as you hit 0 HP, but you can fall unconscious and lose a limb or take ability score damage, even if you don't bleed to death. There are rules for generating enemies, including guidelines for converting monsters from 5e or OSR games to run in 5 torches deep. In the OSR spirit, FTD puts its own spin on rests. They take a whole night, and you heal up to your level in hit points when you rest in a safe area. In other words, not in a dungeon or out in the wilderness. In those situations, you only heal 1 hit point. Picking up the core of 5 torches deep is going to be super straightforward. At its core, it is 5e. And the rest of the mechanics, while different, do feel familiar to anyone who's played D&D. This one, once again, gets a rating of super easy. If you're looking for some classic pulp fantasy, check out Barbarians of Lemuria. BOL is a rules light system set in a world inspired by fantasy author Lynn Carter's Lemurian Chronicles. True old school sword and sorcery. The setting is primal, low magic, and mysterious. The actual core rules fit on just a few pages. It's a 2d6 system. When you want to perform a task, you make a task roll, add appropriate attribute or combat ability or other situational modifiers. If the result is 9 or more, you make it happen. A Nat 2 always fails, and a Nat 12 always succeeds. Players have a ton of freedom, and the action is brutally fast. In Barbarians of Lemuria, careers determine your character's capabilities. Thieves can sneak around and break into stuff. Pirates can handle a ship. The more experienced you are in your career, the better you are at those skills, until eventually you may not even need to roll for stuff that you used to struggle with. There's a load of great material in the Mythic Plus edition, including tips for running the game, ship-to-ship combat, and a bunch of cool monsters. This is a very different system, and it has a very different vibe. Some of the artwork is NSFW, and that might put some folks off. For ease of transition, I'm giving BOL a still pretty easy. Next up, we have Mörk Borg, and hang around because there's just one more after this. The first thing you'll notice is that Mörk Borg has a style unlike any other game out there. It's set in a grimdark world on the verge of an apocalypse. Characters are looking for redemption, forgiveness, or treasure while trying to survive on a dying world. I don't think I can overstress how dark this setting is. Combat in Mörk Borg is brutal and swingy, but incredibly simple, familiar, and fast. Like D&D, Mörk Borg uses a D20 rollover system, but in this case, you always know your target number. Typically, you have to roll at least a 12 to hit after applying the appropriate modifier. And instead of enemies rolling to attack you, you defend against enemy attacks. If you don't roll at least a 12, the enemy hits you. Magic is pretty different, and frankly, Mörk Borg has one of my favorite magic systems. Powers, essentially spells, are usually written on scrolls. Sacred scrolls like Grace of a Dead Saint for healing, or Hermetic Step to find traps, or unclean scrolls like Telekinesis and Death, and anyone can use them. You roll presence, your character's ability to perceive, aim, charm, or wield powers, plus a d4 every morning to determine how many times you can use powers that day. When reading a scroll, you roll a d20 and add your presence score. You have to hit that target of 12 or higher for the power to succeed. If it fails, you lose d2 hit points and become dizzy for an hour. And if you try to use another scroll while you're feeling those effects, even more bad stuff can happen. Yes, the magic system is pretty different, but Mörk Borg shares a core roll with 5e, and you've got a standard target number. Some people are put off by the extreme graphic style of the core rules, even though they're incredibly light, but there's a plain text free version available online. I'm rating the transition to Mörk Borg at easy. And the final game on our list of fast, easy to learn D&D alternatives, Index Card RPG. ICRPG is less a standalone game than the others on this list. It's really a rules-light system framework made for the GM who loves to DIY their game. There are a variety of settings: fantasy, sci-fi, superheroes, Weird West, prehistoric, and it focuses on an incredibly fast and simple D20 rollover mechanic. The entire game is turn-based, not just combat. The GM describes the scene and declares the target number, the players declare what action they're going to take, Then clockwise around the table, they take those actions. If it's an action that they might fail, player and GM decide on the stat that applies, and the player rolls a d20 against the target number, adding that stat's modifier. One of the bits that will feel different for D&D players is that there are sort of two types of actions, checks and attempts. On a check, if the roll succeeds, the action happens. Attempts can have variable results. If the d20 roll succeeds, the player then rolls for effort. Depending on the type of action, you roll a d4 up to a d12, and you got points you can add to some of those effort rolls as well. Character creation is stripped down fast, but still familiar and easy to understand. You have the usual 6 stats, you get 6 points to assign to them however you want. They're your modifiers. There are no levels, but you can gain new abilities based on milestones set by the GM. The turn-based focus can make it feel more gamey than a lot of TTRPGs. There are bits that will feel fiddly in the game, also might feel unfinished to you if you're not really a homebrew DIYer. But the single target system is intuitive and makes turns happen fast. Character creation is a breeze, and the D20 mechanic is familiar. For ease of transition from D&D, I'm rating Index Card RPG at still pretty easy. Adventurers, those are 10 blazing fast D&D alternatives that don't suck to learn. Let me know what you think in the comments. There are so many great TTRPGs out there, and I finally made the decision to move my campaign to Nimble. This video is all about why. Check it out, and I'll see you on the next short rest. Remember, you don't have to quest alone.